One of the sayings as a pilot that most pilots probably always hear is it's like hours and hours of boredom contrasted by seconds of sheer terror.
That was Jon Slikker Jr., managing partner and pilot of Vince Dusters. In today's show, we discuss the art of aerial application, the importance of slowing down. Later in the show, we talk about having a passion for flying. And be sure to stay tuned to hear Jon discuss what he wants to be remembered for.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. My name is Dave Plewich. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to encourage all of our listeners to follow us on all our social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm here with Jon Slikker Jr., managing partner and pilot of Vince Dusters. Jon, we're so happy to have you here today joining us. Thank you for being here, buddy. I can't wait to get into some of today's topics with you, but before we start, Jon, Vince Dusters, how long have you been doing that, buddy?
Well, let's start with my dad because he started flying ag in 97, 98. So since...
That's like 25 years ago.
Yeah, he's doing it a long time.
Are you guys like celebrating an anniversary or anything? Or you guys need a 25th anniversary logo or anything like that?
We bought the business in 2010. So
okay. So technically,
it's not an anniversary coming up.
Right.
Not for a while.
But yeah, he wanted to get into... He just decided one day, I'm going to get into crop dusting.
He's always loved flying. So he was started out as a farmer. So flying and farming, that's what you do as a crop duster. So that's just a natural order of things, I guess. I never at all wanted to be a crop duster or a pilot or have anything to do with farming whatsoever. So I went to Cal State Bakersfield and got a business administration degree with a concentration in management.
What year was that?
2009.
You're failing miserably at this quiz.
I am, and I probably...
You should have brought notes.
I should have.
Okay, so
go ahead.
What did you do once you got your degree? Then what did you do after that?
I sold leather furniture for 7 years for Ramona Fries at R&D Leather Furniture.
Wonderful person. I know her.
She taught me a lot about business. So then after that, she kind of just kicked me out of the nest and said, go fly on your own. I don't think she knew that I was going to be a pilot.
Well, when she kicked you out of the nest, I mean, is that like fired, but that's a nice way of saying fired?
Yeah, kicked me out of the nest. Okay. Fired.
Bye, Jon, you're fired. I mean, we're kicking you out of the nest. Just go. Yeah. Spread your wings.
Well, I mean, because we get complacent. We don't like change.
Yeah.
So... She knew I was going to do a lot better things.
Yeah.
So I started to try to figure out ways to use my degree as I was doing produce distribution with Alpha Produce here in Bakersfield. My dad said, hey, I'm going to buy this crop dusting business and I'd really like to work with you. You know how to manage a business and you're practicing at it. So let's do it. I said, okay, I'll do that. So still no interest in flying. And from 98 to 2010, I never stepped foot out in where my dad worked, out on the farm. So my first day in Buttonwillow was the first day that I started working for my parents.
So, but your dad, what was your dad doing before he bought Vince Dusters then?
Well, he was a helicopter pilot for Vince Dusters.
Oh,
Vince Crop Dusters back then.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he did that for a long time.
And then the guy that owned that wanted out and wanted to retire, and your dad's like, I want to buy the business.
Yeah.
What do you fly? You fly airplane, helicopter, both?
I fly air tractor, airplane, fixed wing. I started out in a biplane, double wing aircraft.
You guys still have that?
We still have that, yeah.
Do you guys use that much anymore? Or?
No, it's kind of the hangar queen, sits in the back of the hangar and collects dust, waits for a need for it to be brought out.
Do you guys ever take it out? I mean,
a little bit, maybe 20 hours a year. We fly probably about 600 hours a year with fixed wing, and so that's all with the air tractor.
Yeah, and you're flying for our listeners that don't know, I mean, you're really close friends. We're real good friends.
I know, that's why it makes this a little bit weird.
I've interviewed other close friends, but not friends as close as you. So You fly fixed wing. So where did you learn how to fly? I mean, did you learn out there in Buttonwillow where your guys' operations at, or?
First, you start out as a private pilot, or you try to get your private pilot's license. Mm-hmm. I did that out of Bakersfield Flying School, out of Meadows Field. And then when I got my private pilot's license, it was time to start really getting into the ag portion of things, because that's where you end up eventually. So to do that, you need a lot of tailwheel time so you can qualify to get on the insurance. Our business is insanely expensive to be in due to insurance.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more dangerous than traditional pilots out there just flying around. I mean, you're doing some pretty wild flying.
Well, it's not wild. I think it's what you get used to, and it's as safe as you want to make it.
Yeah.
So you could be out there making it as really dangerous as you want, but in reality, it's pretty boring. So one of the sayings as a pilot that most pilots probably always hear is, it's like hours and hours of boredom contrasted by seconds of sheer terror.
It's those seconds of sheer terror that I think get to most people, right? Nice wine, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this. I wish all of our guests would bring a bottle of wine. But you have flown the helicopter too, or are you learning how to fly the helicopter?
I'm learning the helicopter. I've just been really busy in the fixed wing, so I haven't really had the chance to get the rating all the way done. So that's going to be one of the focuses this year, is to get that. And you
fly pretty much every day, almost, all year long too. So, I mean, how many hours are you doing? Because everything you do, I know as far as flying, they always reference hours, I guess like boats too, right? I mean, they don't go how many nautical miles you've done. It's how many hours that you've done.
Are there special licenses for boating? I don't know.
I've got no clue.
But yeah, no, everything's in hours.
Okay. And so you do more than the average pilot. I mean, because you're flying constantly. Some people are doing little day trips over to Vegas or to the coast and everything, and a few times a month, and then you're every day, sometimes dark to dark, right?
Yeah, there's seasons where it's dark to dark.
Right.
We're coming up on one that we think is going to end up being dark to dark here pretty soon on almond trees, but weather always dictates that. I'm up in the air almost every day, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for a couple hours, sometimes for 6 to 8 hours. It's one of those things where you get to be in control of the airplane almost all the time. And you really just, you just get the feel for it. And there's times where it's like, I got all this flying. Everybody would wish to have this kind of job where you could fly every day. But there's days where when you're deep into that huge amount of hours that you're putting on 7 days a week from dark to dark, you're like, I need to get out of the airplane and just have a day off.
But you love what you do. I mean,
absolutely.
Clearly, you got a real passion for it. So our listeners here from the Bakersfield area, I've met several people when you tell them about what you do, and they're like in that shock and awe, especially when you go, I'm a pilot, and you do that with your arms, that they've seen you flying. I mean, a lot of people in Bakersfield, when they see these planes flying around, 99% of the time, it's you up in that plane, correct?
100%.
100%. So a lot of times along I-5, where all do you fly? Where all do you do this at?
Pretty much all over Kern County.
Okay.
And then we go up to Kings County by the, what I like to refer to, like Kettleman City, where the pea soup sign is.
Yeah.
That's like one of my landmarks that I've wanted to fly next to all the time for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, we go up there.
So again, I think a lot of people assume, that. So with what you do, crop dusting, you're not out there spraying pesticide. I think a lot of people assume that that's all you do. But tell us a little more about what you do as an industry, and then also how it's evolving and changing over time.
All right, so here we'll take a little trip here.
Okay.
Crop dusting started way, way back. I don't know.
Make something up.
Nobody's gonna know.
I mean, the Wright brothers obviously didn't, start, hey, now that we can do this. What does Google say?
Google's telling me it started with, I can't read that part. Oh, well. So it started a long time ago. Like, we're actually, the industry is in its 101 year this year. So we celebrated our 100th year last year as an industry. So, I mean, we do seeding, fertilizer, and generally call it crop protection materials now.
Okay.
It's all perception. So it used to be the old barnstormer, the daredevil, the guys that took death by, I don't know how that expression is, but unafraid of death and just totally wild, right? So that's the old crop dusters. And then the cowboys of the West, I guess. Yeah. So now you got what we call aerial applicators, where we do the same job, but we're doing it in aircraft that are millions of dollars in cost and hauling loads that with the cost probably upwards of $15,000 to $30,000 a load.
Oh, wow.
Of material in there.
How large of an area will that cover, or does it depend on what it is that you're spraying?
It just depends on what you're spraying and how much water they want to put in the mix to dilute the mix. So what you're really looking at is a really, really expensive piece of equipment hauling expensive crop protection materials and trying to put that out as safe as possible without spraying somebody. Probably don't want to spray anybody.
But you, I mean, obviously, because of how long you've been doing this, you're very accurate with what you do. I mean, with a load, a typical load, what size area are you doing, and how accurate are you? I mean, you really get a feel for wind and how far stuff's going to go and hit your targets, so to speak.
It's more being an artist out there. Because there's all the science about it, and there's making sure you're straight and making, the acres. Because we spray the fields by acres. Like an 80-acre block, for the most part, is a quarter mile by a half mile long. So not every field is exactly the same. So you have to fudge a little here, take away a little there, make it fit as evenly as possible over the field. So there is an artistry to it.
Well, like even compare like row crops to, almond trees, for example. I mean, how much of a difference is that for what you're doing? Right.
And a lot of the times, not only does the crop dictate how you're going to spray it or how you're going to set your nozzles, what hole the nozzle is going to be set at for what pressure, that all is determined by what you're trying to target. If you're trying to kill a bug or protect a tree from fungus, generally you want a smaller droplet size as possible to get a lot more uniform coverage. When you're spraying for like controlling weeds in a field, you really don't want a herbicide to go drifting across the countryside. Right. So it kills things that you don't want to kill. So you go for a bigger droplet size, something that's more controllable, goes down to the ground faster.
Well, so like last night we were at an event together, and two of our other co-hosts were there from the R2 Cents podcast. I overheard you talking to Scott about spraying into the wind, but you were talking about the science of it, what it causes, what happens to the drop that kind of shears the drop of whatever it is that you're spraying. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I found that interesting. I just caught that out of the corner of my ear.
Yeah,
I suppose last night.
One of the applications we were doing recently was on tangerines, and citrus is generally pretty hard to get a lot of good control in, especially by air. So one of the things that we've thought about trying out and did was put the nozzle directly into the wind. Normally they're pointed straight back where the wind is not, it's more shielded. But in an effort to shear the droplet into tiny little dots best as possible to gain that coverage that might need to get the droplet into the orange, then we just twisted like half of the nozzles on the airplane into the wind. It just creates that fog, mist.
Oh, all right.
So you got a whole bunch of tiny little particles trying to get where you're supposed to put them to get that protection on that tangerine.
So it better coverage by making it more of a fog mist then,
Yeah. All right. So you're always going for uniform coverage, which means everything's covered the same. But if you need just a little bit of like that one little dot to get in that one little space, creating a million little dots gives you a better chance.
And with what we're doing, especially in the state of California and with ag and what's going on, I know you belong to a couple associations in the state and nationally, correct?
Yeah.
What goes on in those associations? What is it that you guys get around and talk about? Not like, hey, nice playing, dude.
There is a lot of, hey, nice playing, dude. There is a lot of that. So we do a lot of drinking and a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie, because every convention that we go to, with the state association or a national is a celebration that you made it that year. So nowadays it's, you're going to 9 times out of 10, you're going to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it went from crazy dangerous to not so crazy.
Yeah. Do you guys talk about a lot of the challenges in the industry, or because you guys are heavily regulated, right? I mean, you're not just like a normal pilot out there. I mean, you're having to deal with a lot of other things that most don't deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. So the associations focus on state political pressures, regulators, trying to make sure that we still have an industry to fly in. So there's a lot of bills that come out of the woodwork, or somebody trying to regulate us even heavier, or maybe deregulate us in ways that would actually cause more of a black eye in a long run. So we've run into a couple of things like that where deregulation might not help us as an industry to stay around. So we fight those, or we try to get support to make sure we have the room to work. So we do a lot of fundraising to make sure we have money for that. Yeah, I mean, it's just, we do that both on state and national levels. We do training courses to make sure that we have the safety tools we need to stay alive. So
I got a question here for you. Have you ever wrecked?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. It was a dumb mistake. Most of them are, I guess. I was taking off downwind in a hot environment with a heavy load. And by the time I realized that I wasn't going to be able to fly, I was past the point of no return.
Well, the plane was too heavy, or you just weren't getting enough lift because of the heat and everything? Or?
Yeah, I just didn't have enough speed to generate that lift.
Okay.
So at the end of the runway, there's like this little mud ramp or dirt ramp, and it launched me up in the air. I guess I should have figured I wasn't going to die because my life didn't flash before my eyes.
Well, that's good.
But all I did was make sure, and most pilots or all pilots know this, you fly the airplane till landing no matter if it's a crash or not. So I just kept the airplane straight and ended up hitting pretty hard on the ground and somersaulting the airplane once, landed inverted on my back. And one of the biggest things I remember from that whole thing was just mud, rice plant, and water just going all over the windshield. And then all of a sudden I'm upside down. So one of the old timers, Delbert Williams, he operated out of Shafter. He's been here since the beginning of crop dusting pretty much here in Kern County. Used to work for Atwood Dusters. I remember some of the stories he told when he crashed quite a bit back then, where you found yourself upside down. The last thing you want to do is unbuckle your safety belt before you put your hand up to arrest the fall, because you'll hurt your neck or your back or something like that. So that's what I did. I remembered that, unbuckled, got out, and started kicking my helmet across the rice paddy.
A little upset at yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. I was so shaky. I called my dad. I said, and it's kind of one of those things, we made that pact where if we're calling for something bad that's happened, call him and I say, Dad, I'm okay. I'll call you back here in a minute, and hang up, no matter what he says, no matter, because it gives everybody time to freak out. And then when I call back or he calls, we're all good. I've had to do a couple of those calls.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, you've only wrecked once, though. So.
Only wrecked once. There was one time where I was, I guess, a youngster, probably 1,000 hours in my career, hit a wire, got in a rush. And God, I hope the insurance doesn't listen to this.
We're talking about somebody else, right?
Yeah, somebody else. But most accidents, I think, probably in my opinion, they happen because we're in a hurry.
Yeah.
Something's pushing us to get everything done, or do it quick before the storm comes, or, hey, my back's against the wall. I got 10,000 acres to do, and I got to get this done fast. And so usually when you slow it all down, you just take a little chunk of it, you put the airplane back in the hangar, you get a lot more done than if the airplane's in the field stuck. Since I've learned to kind of slow it down, I've had a lot less problems.
So you guys, who does the maintenance on your planes? You guys you don't do that in-house, but I mean, obviously every day that you get in that plane, you still go through that process of making sure everything is good. It's going to be a safe flight.
Yeah.
No mechanical issues, right? I mean, how are you checking for all that stuff?
So we do a pre-flight safety brief or safety. You walk around the airplane and then you make sure everything's where it's supposed to be and there's no problems that, like, you have a little bit of wear on something and it's going to cause it to snap or fray in flight. So you take care of all those issues, or you find none, and then you say, okay, I'm going to go. But any mechanical issues or work that we have that we can't handle in-house, everything that we handle in-house is very simple. We take it to Valley Aircrafts in Tulare. Michael Shea now, he's a great mechanic, very skilled at his craft. And you take it to somebody that knows it because your life, it depends on it.
With what you guys are doing, like you said, it's not like there's a bunch of people signing up to be pilots. I mean, the industry and where it's going, you guys are looking for pilots. So let's say any of our listeners out there, and I know some young up-and-comer, how do they go about getting into doing what they're doing? And if someone goes, hey, I want to be a crop duster, what do they got to do?
There is the bare bones. You got to have your commercial pilot's license, and then you have to take a test with the Department of Pesticide Regulation and get your apprenticeship license and eventually your journeyman license. What you really need is a love for farming and obviously a love for flying. The flying is only like a quarter of it, I would say. 3/4 of it is farming. So you got to understand what you're putting out. You got to understand what plant you're putting it on, and what that chemical or that protection agent that you're putting out or fertilizing is going to do to that plant. So that way you can do the best job.
I always assume it would be the farmer that's telling you, hey, John, we need you to do this, and they're telling you what they need. But it sounds like you guys really work with the farmer to assess their needs and come up with the right solution for them, right?
I think they do most of all that, and they have PCAs that help them advise them in that respect. What I'm really getting at is, if say we're spraying wheat with herbicides, so we're killing a lot of broadleaf in that field and some grasses that don't belong. If you're spraying next to an alfalfa field, well, alfalfa is broadleaf in general. So if you don't understand that herbicide that you're going to put out on the wheat will kill the alfalfa, you might drift over onto that neighboring field not understanding what you're putting out.
Okay.
That's why it's important. Plus, crop identification from the air. You could tell what a wheat field looks like versus an alfalfa field just by sight. There are times where pilots get confused and spray the wrong field or apply fertilizer to the wrong field thinking it's wheat.
Oh, wow.
Or thinking it's alfalfa and it's really carrots. You don't want to do that. So yeah, learning the crops and learning what you're putting out is very important. But one thing that we do as pilots, because we're very in tune with the weather, or at least we should be, we help advise, like the last storm we just had, I needed to do a tree spray for insects on almond trees. To work with crews and around a school, we needed to have the weekend, like a Saturday or Sunday, to do it. We wanted to spray on Sunday initially because there's nobody around, everybody's off, there's no school in session. But the weather wasn't going to support that. It was going to be way too windy with the storm coming in. So I advised the farmer that we should go ahead on Saturday instead of Sunday, so that way we have a window to put the insecticide out and then also give that insecticide time to work, so that way we're not just wasting material.
Oh, yeah. Storm comes in and wipes away what you just did. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's important to also be able to say something like that and help the farmer make that decision and say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably 80% of the job is understanding those things to make a good application. Flying should be second nature. So we do so much of it every year. I'm not even really thinking about how am I going to turn, what speed am I going through the field at. You feel that. It's all inherent. Kind of like driving a car, you're listening to music and you're feeling the road, and you could feel that you're going faster than what you normally go.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Again, part of our conversation I overheard last night as you were being interviewed at dinner.
I know. I wish it was here right now.
Yeah, I know. It's all good. But so for you and the effect that you have, I don't know if people really appreciate what you do, because it is so important to the food that we eat and what you're out there doing. But another part of being an aerial applicator, it's hard to say, crop duster a little easier to say, but is that you're able to move quickly to get, when a farmer decides, got a pest on his field or they need something done. Traditional ground methods don't even compare to what you're able to come in and do, and just do quickly to get them back on track if they've gotten off track for whatever reason.
Yeah, as long as there is large farming or large economic farms out there, there's always going to need to be a way to move through those fields quickly. So timing is usually, when we're called, it's usually an issue. It's either too wet in the field, or we got a storm coming up, or we got bug pressure mounting that just can't be solved in 2 weeks to get over a large plot of land. So like these trees that I was telling you about earlier, that insecticide, it would take a ground rig probably 3 or 4 days to get through.
Oh, wow.
It took us 2.5 hours to get through that.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a bit faster.
Yeah.
And we're not bogged down by mud. I guess that's where I was really kind of getting at, the large farms. And this is also seen with drones. They're really, really being tested in small plots, like 5 acres or 10 acre plots. But the economics of those being in the large farms and having something very expensive go through that field, it's not quite there yet, in my opinion.
I mean, do you think that is the direction that it's heading? I mean, because again, when you put it in those terms, you're talking about a very, very large drone that can handle the capacity of what you carry. And I mean, it's just got to be super expensive. It just doesn't make any sense.
I think a very large drone in the future that does what we do now with manned aircraft will be an unmanned version of my aircraft. Just servos and things move. An autopilot in my airplane would be the solution for the unmanned industry, I would say.
I mean, how far away do you think that? I mean, realistically.
Well, the military's there.
The military's using it, yeah, but I mean, look at the expense of it for the military.
That's the driving factor, the expense, the economics of that is what's really when we're gonna see that technology there. So right now we're trying to do it, and I could be completely wrong, but I think we're trying to do it cheaply with these tiny little drones, and tiny is like the size of a dining room table, trying to do 1 or 2 acres a load or something like that, where you still have, it's unmanned, but you still have a guy in a van watching that drone do its application not too far away from the field. Yeah. It's all going to be line of sight.
Yeah. So you're still talking, it's still expensive compared to what, at the end of the day, what you're doing.
Right. I think with drones, I don't know. It's hard because there's a lot of pilots that love doing what we do and would choose it every day over not doing it. So as far as a drone keeping a pilot safe, I don't think a pilot would choose that. But I think having, like how I see it in the future, I would like to be in my airplane, practicing my craft, and having 2 other airplanes that are unmanned doing the same thing as I am with me, like in a neighboring field or off doing something, a field somewhere way off in the distance, and coming back, and then I can shore it up, with a manned aircraft.
Yeah.
So
let's talk a little bit about your future and where you're headed and everything. I mean, again, you had no plans to get into the family business, but Dad reached out to you and said, "Son, I would like you to be a part of this." And then when you did finally fly, you realized, "Oh my God, I really love doing this." I mean, that. So where are you guys at now as far as, the business and what's in the future for business hunters? What's been going on with it?
So right now all right, so I'm going to start here. And I think very compartmental, if you can't.
Okay.
Yes. Right. So when I stepped foot on a runway next to an airplane, I thought, holy cow, this is cool. I got to be in one of these. This is the neatest business I've ever worked with. So I worked the ground for 5 years, chased airplanes and helicopters, watched them do their applications, learned a lot, as much as I could, about farming and the farmers and what they look for. So then I was told that because I wasn't a pilot and I was managing the business, because I wasn't a pilot, I couldn't tell another pilot how to fly. Mm-hmm. And that's just something you don't do. A non-pilot does not tell a pilot how to fly. So I thought, God, if I'm going to manage and own it one day, I got to know how to fly. My dad was like a little nervous, I think. We were on a drive up to Tulare where Valley Aircrafts is at. He goes, "You really want to know how to fly? You really want to fly?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you're not going to do it if it's just for the money, because that'll get you killed. You got to do it because you love it." So I said, "Well, I don't know if I love it. I need to try it." So I did, and here we are. But getting back to it, it's really navigating the status quo, I would say. Keeping the applications at the quality level that they're at and trying to constantly improve has kept us on the top and viable. We've updated our fleet from Radial Applicators and piston hiller helicopters to turbine aircraft, a turbine airplane, an air tractor, or a jet ranger, long ranger, and a Huey. So we've really modernized our fleet compared to when we first bought the business.
Okay.
That's helped us stay competitive, and it's helped us to, when we get a lot of calls for people to need service, it's helped us be there on time.
So you have, 2 planes and a helicopter that can be all out on the same day working? Is that?
So it's just my dad and I.
Okay.
So just depending on the situation and how many acres we have to spray, we choose which ship to utilize. So right now we have the 502, the fixed wing, and that does pretty much all the airplane work. But what we're finding out is more and more we need an airplane that'll haul, instead of 500 gallons of water, we need an airplane that'll haul 800 gallons of water. So that's probably our next step for the business, is to get a larger airplane, just because there's so few pilots out there. I'd like to work with CAU, and I've kind of mentioned it about building a...
For our listeners, what's CAU?
Oh, CAU is California Aeronautical University.
Okay.
They actually have, it'll be past by now when this comes out, but they'll have a career day, which will be out there, teaching kids all about ag and crop dusting, and trying to garner some interest in having them go from an airline track to an ag, like an aerial applicator ag track.
Oh, okay. And again, for our listeners, that's the school that's out there by
Meadows Field.
Out in Meadows Field. Okay. So that is it here in town.
Here in town.
Very cool. Are you going to go out there and teach, or what are you going to do? I mean,
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was my teacher for the helicopter, and he was a mentor throughout my training. So when you get trained by the best, you end up being the best. Mm-hmm. So I think I have a lot to share. I'm still learning every day. If you stop learning in this business, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah. Again, with the helicopter, that's your most expensive craft to use. Why do you guys? When do you need a helicopter as opposed to a fixed wing airplane?
So you need a helicopter when you want something very intricate and detailed, a really detailed application done, maybe next to some residential houses, some power lines.
Very controlled. Okay.
Very controlled. That's where they shine. And then when you want to get a lot done in a very economical way, you throw an airplane at it.
Okay.
So I guess I would say, because we're going to end up hiring pilots, we're going to have to.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm looking at is I'd like to be the helicopter pilot and have somebody come do the airplane. So that way I can as owner, I can do more of that intricate work and keep that in my hands versus having somebody that not as careful. I wouldn't say not as careful, but just
not as experienced yet.
Maybe not as experienced, or it's just more surgical. It's like I guess a brain surgeon versus, a family doctor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, my doctors aren't listening to this either.
I hope not. Man, that's interesting stuff there, bud. Tell me a little bit about your day-to-day life. What else do you do? I mean, you're in the Buttonwillow Lions Club, right?
I'm president of the Buttonwillow Lions Club currently. That's been a huge bit of fun for me. We just finished a poker tournament over at Luigi's that was really successful. And then we're getting ready for a reverse draw over at my hangar that we have for the Buttonwillow Lions Club. So we do 2 very large fundraisers for the year that help us support the Buttonwillow community.
And then since you're president, and how long have you been president for? And
I've been president for about 6 months.
Yeah. And you've done some amazing things. You've really grown the membership quite a bit. I mean,
we're at 168 members now. Yeah.
Wow. That's one of the largest in California, isn't it?
At least the largest in this district. I don't know. I think there might be a couple of clubs that are a lot bigger than we are, but
you've had tremendous growth.
We have a lot of growth, and we have a lot of energy, and we support a lot of the local Buttonwillow community. You're a lion too.
I am a lion. Because of you, my friend. Because of you. Cheers to that. And then I'm also in West Rotary. I've been a Rotarian for many, many years.
I finally filled out my application.
Yeah, so you're going to join that club?
Hopefully. So, yeah, I do a lot of community support and outreach just because, that's kind of where the heart is. But also, it kind of gets me out there and keeps me social, What we do, we're very secluded in what we do.
I mean, you've gotten a lot more involved with the community and just putting yourself out there, more so than your dad. But part of this was I know you because you've recently just become a partner in the business, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I know, as other people that have their own businesses are wanting to, they're going to be in a situation where they're taking over somebody's business. That's some of the things that I've realized about you is you're very, you seem to really put yourself out there and try to learn more and learn more about getting involved with the community. And I think that's important. I mean, it's definitely made your business a lot more known.
Yeah, I think being able to control the narrative, maybe not control it, but really put a nice light on it, on this industry helps quite a bit. We just recently did, for the Farm Bureau, Spray Safe. I talked at a Spray Safe event, and what was neat was being able to talk not just to farmers, to the guys in the field that you normally don't see or talk to.
Yeah.
Because we're always flying over the top of them, not spraying them, but you can wave out the cockpit window, but you never really get to answer any of the questions that they might have.
Oh, so that event kind of brought in those people to ask questions and find out a little bit more about what you're really doing up there.
Right. So, and then writing for the Valley Ag Voice, getting some opinions of mine out there and outreach to what it looks like to be an aerial applicator or how to become one or, things to watch out for if you see it, if you're at the side of the road watching an airplane or a helicopter do an application, what things can you look for to make sure that you're safe?
So if somebody's, like I said, somebody is interested in becoming a pilot and getting into your industry, how does somebody get a hold of you?
I got a lot of work on that because I need a website.
I'll be helping you out with that, bud.
We do
want this on record.
We do have a Facebook profile, which I did not share by accident because I forgot all about it.
So they can go to Facebook and do Vince Dusters, and they can message you through there. Perfect.
Right. I just recently made my Instagram account professional.
Just recently?
Just literally.
Like 50 minutes ago.
Has it been 50
minutes
already? It's
been 50
already?
too. We've been talking for 50
minutes.
minutes.
Oh, my God. And I'm still nervous. It's the red button. You're not wrong.
Don't look at the red button. Well, at least I turned on the red button this time. I've done that mistake before. I got one more question for you.
Shoot.
And I think this is important, especially with the world of organics and everything. Is what you do, I mean, organic? What makes it organic or not organic when you're out there spraying?
I think instead of saying organic or not organic, there's organics that we spray. I'm going to phrase it like we did before. So what's the difference between organic and conventional fields?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So a pesticide is something that controls a pest population. It could be soap and water. So there are pesticides that are organic that control pest populations, like in organic lettuce fields or vegetables. So we wash out very meticulously for that. Everything's clean and tested. So they have materials specialized for the organic crops. We actually spray those just as much as we spray conventional.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And again, that's not just for bugs. That's also for fungus or something like that to kill that off.
Yeah, I would say fungicides a lot because, fungicides, pesticides, not necessarily weeds, because there's a lot of practices you can do to control weeds in an organic field. I still have a lot to learn about organic farming. But yeah, there are practices, cultural practices you can use as a farmer to keep the weeds at bay. In rice, up in Sacramento, they do this by controlling the water levels in the rice paddies to choke out the weeds versus having to spray for them.
That's very interesting. I had no clue about that.
Yeah. So short answer is we spray both.
Okay.
The other short answer is we're very meticulous in what goes on what crops. So if it is organic, we make sure we're clean.
Soap and water kills what bugs exactly? Is that something I can do around my house?
A lot of gardeners use soap and water, like gardening gurus.
Yeah.
Including myself, I'll use soap and water to get rid of bugs on your little garden plants and stuff like that. Yeah.
Another reason why it's very important to wash your vegetables before you eat them, because you've sprayed.
Always wash.
Even though you've sprayed soap and water on them, don't assume.
Right.
All right, well, okay, let's wrap this thing up.
Wait,
bud.
Why? Do we have to?
No, we don't have to. I mean, we can keep talking. How much wine we got left?
Oh, we got plenty.
No, I've got some rapid-fire questions for you.
Okay, let's do them.
So I already know this one.
Well, maybe nobody else does.
What is your biggest failure, and what did you learn from that experience? I'm going to say the accident, right?
You just said, yeah, that was the one.
No, what is one of your biggest failures, and what did you learn from that experience?
I would say the crash.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest one, because the culmination of the accidents that I've had, it's realizing to slow things down overall. You want to avoid issues or problems, slow it all down. I'm a huge movie buff too. So in Draft Day, I forget the quote exactly, but there's a part in the movie where it's described that the greats are able to take time and slow it down. So that's what I try to do. Slow everything down so that way it's fast is smooth, or slow is smooth and fast. I don't even know that.
But you don't have to go do it a second time, so if you
don't
do it nice and slow and get it done right the first time.
Yeah, you don't do it a second time and it's done right the first time, but also you bring the airplane back to the hangar and you have a chance to do it again tomorrow.
I imagine you've probably watched Top Gun like 100 times. I think you watch it once a week.
I think every pilot watches Top Gun, and I think every pilot watches it with a little tear in their eye. So, and that's the funny thing about being a pilot. I think a lot of us share or have in common is that we all see ourselves as Maverick. So I walk up. You could play the music, the soundtrack in your helmet, and feel like you're Maverick. You feel like you're the master of your craft, and I think that's the appeal to what I do is, getting in that airplane and doing the mission and bringing it home. And even if you're just a fly over the weekend kind of pilot, when you're in that little Cessna 150 or that little decathlon, putting around the pattern or going to Vegas or going to the coast to do some wine tasting, but you can't fly after you taste the wine. No. But you feel like you're in command. You're on top of the world. I think that's why Top Gun is so cool, because everybody feels like they're Maverick, and they should be.
That's cool, man. What is a common myth about your job or the field of your expertise?
I think the most common myth is that because I'm a crop duster or an aerial applicator now, that I'm a huge daredevil or that I'm crazy. I might be crazy, but I'm not a daredevil at all.
I'd have to stick with the crazy part too.
I am crazy a little bit, yeah. Depends on how much wine are we going to be drinking.
But that makes you adventurous. Well, then you are adventurous. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I would like to have as many relationships with as many people as possible to have that memorial that fills an entire hangar when I'm gone. To me, that just speaks volumes for what your life was. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I think that I've become more social. I don't want to be gone and then I have like 5 people show up to my memorial.
Yeah, I think you're on your way, dude.
Yeah.
I'll show up.
Well, maybe.
Hey, thanks for coming today, dude. I really do appreciate it. I know we've talked about this for a while, and it was good to have you on there, and I hope our listeners all enjoyed this as well.
Yeah, I hope so, because I was pretty nervous.
Cheers, dude. Oh, you
cheers.
Did great. That's a wrap.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.